Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm Dr. Wayne Pernell, your host, guide, and coach on this journey. With me today is Richard Bledsoe. He's got an amazing history and trajectory of leadership, and I connected with him about 15 years ago. It's been remarkable just to see the growth and the the leadership that he's brought to others as well as to his family as well as to himself. And so with that, Rich, welcome to One Sharp Sword.
Hey, Wayne, thanks. I'm so glad we're here talking about leadership today. And I'm thrilled to walk through this podcast with you to discover what leadership really is.
Let's dive in. Let's discover what leadership really is. You didn't you didn't set out to be like when I first met you, you were the senior vice president of a multinational global
Yeah.
company, and you were like a step or two away from the CEO of this global company, which means
Hmm.
that you were pretty high up in the food chain. But
Hmm.
you didn't start out there. Like I know that you started out years and years and years ago. What I like to do is to let's wind back the clock. You started you started in a trade school, right? You
Yeah.
or if you want to wind back the clock even before that, where'd you grow up and
Yeah.
what like you didn't wake up one morning and go, I'm gonna be the SVP, it's like so talk a little bit about your journey. What got you
Yeah.
there? And then we'll progress forward from there.
Sure. I grew up in a little town called Lyndhurst, New Jersey, which is essentially near the Meadowlands Arena. And as a kid, I was tinkering with things. Could have been lawnmowers and motorbikes, bicycles. I did tune-ups on our family's cars. So I was always mechanically inclined. And uh, as I grew older, and you get into high school, there's two tracks. There's a college prep track or there's a vocational track, and I selected the vocational track and went through a series of trades, electrical, masonry, auto mechanics, and uh, once I graduated high school, I really wasn't sure what track I wanted to take, and I was in our house, and this was back in probably late 70s. And we had an old black and white television that didn't work. And I started tearing it apart. My mother comes in. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to fix this thing." And little did I know, you know, tube TVs back then had extremely high voltage, and you could kill yourself very easily. So she said, "Well, why don't you go to electronics school because you like to play with things, and the future is going to be in technology." And this was back in 1979, Wayne. So I wound up going to DeVry and got my degree in electronics, and then I went on to get more advanced certifications in digital electronics and so on and so forth. And I went to work in of all things, the fire and security industry, which was a complete accident. I just interviewed at a small place. It was a you know uh, privately owned small company, and I connected with the hiring manager, and
So,
there I
so let's
was.
pause for a second. This is awesome. One of the things that is interesting about most people's trajectories is that they prepare and then opportunity comes up. And
Hmm.
you could go, no, I am like this is what my degree is in. But you were like, nah, this thing came up. Let me explore it. And I think that is like when we look at success paths, that's that's kind of essential. That it's like I chose to pursue this possibility. I chose to go down this road. So kind of by accident. It's like that's awesome. That to me is one of those things that I want to point out that the opportunity is there. It's always there. And so it's what you do with it. And you were like, you leaned in and
Yeah.
it took you down this different path.
Yeah, I when I think about it now, I I wish I had more guidance as a child, and there are learning lessons. We grew up, we were not a wealthy family. I remember every Wednesday going to school was trade school day, and you'd walk from one school to another, whether it was a wood shop or a metal shop, and all the kids had money for lunch because you'd walk back and you'd go to Don's Pizzeria, and there was a slice of pizza and a soda per quarter.
Mm,
I remember asking my parents for money for school day, and they just didn't have it. And this is a quarter, So my whole life we grew up, and we had all the essentials that we needed to grow as a family, but nothing else. So part of that struggle, fed my initiative, I guess, throughout my whole life. Like I wanted better for my family. I wanted more for my family. And in particular, I wanted to be more involved in how our children were brought up and guided, not to say, go do this, Kelly or Ryan, but to give them the education. Both of our children went to Purdue. My daughter's now a PA. My son's working at General Motors. He's going for his MBA. But that was through pushing and guidance. Now, relative to what they wound up doing for a living, that was where uh, we teased out what their likes and dislikes were. For me, my son and I'm an automotive fanatic. So growing up, my son was always helping me with my cars, whether it was waxing or, you know, tinkering with them. And my daughter was always, she always wanted to help people. So through their growth and development as young adults, we pointed them in the directions that we felt they were really interested in. And here they are. I didn't have that guidance. So if I go back to my earlier point, the guidance that I have was, well, you like to tinker, Rich. So why don't you go into electronics because that's where the future lies. And it got me to where I am as a start, but I would have loved more.
I
So,
love this.
you know,
I love this. So, yeah, this is really good. Um, I've made some notes along the way, so I'm looking down to read my notes because you had the essentials growing up. You also knew something big that was a deliberate decision. So this is also part of a success path, and it's something that I point out when I run my retreats that there is more. You have to dare to desire it. You have to actually step in and go, you know what? I want more. I want more for me. I want more for my family. The other part of that is you recognized you didn't get mentorship. And instead of going, well, I guess I got what I got, you went, I want to be the mentor for my family. But also you took that into your the way you engaged with the people on your teams. So
mhm.
like you recognized their potential, and I think that's another huge leadership lesson is that you didn't force your kids to follow a path. You saw their natural propensity towards something, their desires to
Mhm.
follow a certain path. And you did that. You did that with your team members along the way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I've shared with you my leadership philosophy, I think, Wayne. And one of the bullet points in that leadership philosophy is, everybody has an important role in a company, whether it's large, small, medium, whatever. But not everybody is in the right seat at the right time. And uh, throughout my career, I found dozens and dozens of people who were in big roles that didn't necessarily belong there. Not that they weren't valuable, but they didn't have the right skills or abilities for the particular role. So I moved people around quite a bit, which at times became, that's very stressful on not only me, but as the individual receiving that feedback. In the end, on balance, more often than not, the feedback I got was, "Hey, Rich, I appreciate it. I was really hurt that you took me out of this role, but I really enjoy the thing that I'm doing now, and I'm really good at it. So, yeah, thanks." And if you do that, a couple of dozen times, a couple of things happen. You realize if you take the emotion out of it, you have to do it with the right degree of dignity and respect and empathy and all that. But businesses don't thrive when you have the wrong leaders in the wrong seats. So, when you're the companies that I've worked for most of my life for public companies, and in public companies, it's quarter to quarter. If you don't hit it, they're, you're answerable. So you have to make, decisions along the way that are going to promote and enhance the productivity of your business. That's simple.
I also love that it's that simple and well, while most success steps are simple, they're not always easy,
Mm.
right? That it's like it's that simple and the truth is it's that simple. It's right in front of you. You just need to, you said a couple of dozen times, you just need to practice and be willing to to lift those around you. Be willing to make mistakes along the way. Can we talk a little bit about like we left off when you had diverged into, a different thing and along the way you took on different greater and greater and greater roles. Can we talk a little bit about the mistakes that you made and how you recovered from them? And you don't have to be like really specific about the mistakes unless you want to be. Mostly it's like, okay, yeah, I did this and wow. And right, what did you learn?
Yeah, there's so many mistakes, Wayne. We could be here for hours, but I think, for me, that's always been uh, my learning superpower. Oops, I really messed this up. I should probably not do that again. Or uh, how do I recover from that mistake? And I think, I there's a series of events that have taken place over my life, one of which you were instrumental in helping me through with the president of the company I worked for at the time. But I've always had a challenge with authority. So if I go back to my technician days, I wanted to grow. And at some point in my career, my wife, Kathy, encouraged me to go back to school at night to get a college degree. And I was like, yeah, it's not my thing. And one thing led to another. I started going back to school 11 years later with a child and a full-time job. I got my degree. But through that period of time, I progressed from a technician to service manager to sales manager. Throughout that period of time, what I learned for myself is if I worked for somebody who I thought was less competent than I was or that I believed I was, it didn't sit well with me. So I wanted to progress so that I wasn't working for somebody that I didn't respect or appreciate working for or I thought I could do a better job for. So that really helped me climb throughout my career. The downside of it was how I treated those above me wasn't always my best day. And you know, one of the would you mind if I went into the example that you coached me on with Bob?
Oh, you know what? Any of the things that you want to talk about in our coaching, I think that would be really helpful for our audience that it's like this is what coaching is, this is how I approached it. Absolutely, please.
Great. All right. So time frame was roughly 2012 or 2013. And there were three regions with the company I worked for. So roughly $3 billion company, about 1.6 billion of it was under my control, 5,000 employees, and we were just cranking it out. So of the three general managers, myself, two others, my team was always leading the pack. For 5 years, we led in every measurable metric, and we did very well for it. My team did very well, but my relationship with the president of the company who I reported to was not good. And, you know, there's, I don't know all the reasons, but we just didn't have a good chemistry together. I caught him. He would jump on conference calls with mine unannounced, and he'd call me afterwards and criticize how I portrayed the organization or some of the things we were doing. So um, I took that very hard, and I got into it with him on uh, I felt like I was being spied on, and the relationship just went down into the tubes. That's when you and I connected, and I asked for your help, Wayne. How do I patch up this relationship with this gentleman who I have to work with, and he has to work with me. I mean, he
The
can't.
president of this massive multi-billion dollar
Right.
company. How do I work with him? Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
And because of my performance and the awards that I had won from the CEO of the parent company and others, he couldn't get rid of me. It wasn't, the optics, and it was political suicide for him. So, the work we did together was essentially communication, and how could I communicate to him specifically what I needed from him and what I wanted from him, and also recognizing that how my actions as a leader of 5,000 some odd people could be uh, interpreted, if I was less than forthright with, you know, how I worked with my team and how I spoke to my team. So sometimes I let my guard down, and when I let my guard down, um, your team members, you know, could see that as an acceptable behavior, and then that kind of trickles down. So over the next 12 months, you and I worked together on how he and I could work together and not necessarily go have a beer together. And it
Yeah.
worked very well. And, he eventually moved on, and so did I. But that experience was the culmination of me not respecting the senior leadership, and having the wherewithal, to think about how he interpreted my actions and how I behaved with him. Another example is,
Let me just pause
yeah.
because that's huge. What you just said in the story, we talked about communication. What's true in coaching is not only communication that we worked on, it's also self-reflection. And how do you show up, right? So these days with exponential success, I talk about values, vision, and vitality. What are your values? What are your core values? And if your core values don't match the organization's values, you're in the wrong job. If they do match, but something's just amiss, then you're in the job wrong. And so it makes you have to like the coaching requires that you do some self-reflection. The vision is what you convey. And again, communication helps that. It also matters that you reflect on vitality, which is how are you showing up? How are you embodying your values and vision? And it could be that, and I've seen leaders besides you that have shown up in a way where they believe in the company and they believe in it and they show up in a way that's sort of about themselves rather than about a grander vision. And to work through that is big. And you had to let go of the kind of tug of war of right fighting, right?
Hmm.
I'm right.
Yeah.
No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. And it's like, and letting go of that allowed you a different perspective. And that's right. A lot of coaching is about perspective and what you do with a new perspective, right? Because sometimes you get a new perspective and you go, don't like it. And whether you like it or not, you get to see things from a different way, and now you have new opportunities. So what do you do with it? And fortunately for you, you were like, oh, hmm, we can approach it this way, and
Yeah.
that built the relationship. So that's great. And I wanted to point that out that it wasn't just like, well, we worked on communication. which was tough because and most leaders don't know that they're not communicating. That's the other thing, or how they're communicating. So so thank you. That was a great example. Great example.
You're welcome. Uh, if I think about, so post that era, uh, Tyco, which was our parent company, was the largest fire and life safety company in the world, 10 billion plus dollars. And I was on the senior leadership team. And we were at this summit. There was a new COO that managed the group function. And we're in this meeting room in Princeton, New Jersey. And this new COO is kind of walking through, espousing all of his thoughts and how he approaches the business. He had no knowledge of our industry at all. He was a tech leader prior to this. And, throughout the course of 2 or 3 days, these topics would come up and I didn't know it, but I would kind of be sitting in my chair and my eye would be twitching or I'd be like, my eyes would be rolling. And a couple of times, he would conclude his oration and ask for any questions or comments. And several times, I chimed in. Well, by the third day, he had had enough of that. He said, "Look, Rich, there are two types of generals. There are Pentagon generals and there are field generals. This room is for field generals. If you want to be in this room, this is what I expect from you. If you want to be a field general, then we'll have a talk with Aaron, who was my boss at the time." And I just stopped right there and I said, "Thanks, Pentagon general is fine." And in my mind, I was appeasing him at the moment because I didn't want to get booted out of the room. When we left, the gentleman I worked for, Aaron Sake, who's a fantastic leader, said to me, he goes, "Rich, I don't disagree with what you said, but how you respond in an environment like that is really important. The optics and how you carry yourself, and this is not Bob." And you know, I just he coached me on how to be mindful of that. And so, I marinated on that for a couple of days. And I came back to him and said, "Aaron, you know what? I'm a field general at heart. I can sit in that room and pretend we're drawing up plans to do all these things, but I'd rather be on the side of the tank with the field going down and wiping out the opposition. So if that means I have to take on another role, whatever, that's fine. But I do not want to sit in that room and pretend to be somebody I'm not." And he said, "Look, I have no plans to make any changes. You're doing a great job at what you're doing. Just go do it. I'm asking you to be mindful in the context of those kinds of meetings." And it was a great lesson from a great mentor. And it goes back to my roots, Wayne. I liked tinkering. I liked seeing the results of the action. People who are out there making things work and happen love to see you out there with them grinding it out, and they respect it, and I respect them for doing it. So I think a lot of it comes back to how I was raised and what are my natural tendencies are.
I think that's great. The to fall into and to enhance natural tendencies and not force it. The fact that you could do leadership and management, and that is a delicate balance. And leadership really is about being out front. It's about looking at the strategy. It's about seeing into the future a little bit. And management comes from the Latin manos, which is hands-on. And your ability to be hands-on when needed and and managing people and process, and all of those pieces are essential. Manage people because you're a manager, manage process because that's management as well. You have to make sure that things flow with the right people, with the other resources. And so that's very tactical. And then the strategic part is the leadership part. So you had a brilliant way of just knowing who you were without trying to be somebody like, I want to be bigger. It's like you knew there was more for you without without it being like ego based, right? So
Yeah.
it wasn't I want to be bigger. It was I know there's more and I want to live in my truth on the way to more. And I think that is an essential lesson.
Oh, thank you. I was thinking about the leadership philosophy that I sent you, weeks ago, one of the other bullets is on there is something along the lines of, look, at times we're going to be asked to do things that we don't necessarily agree with, or think might not be the right direction. But when asked to do it, we have to do it, and we're going to do it to the best of our ability and make the best of the situation. Because everyone that I know, regardless of what job they do, has things that they're asked to do that they're not necessarily fond of. Doesn't mean you get to choose not to do it. You have to do it. So if you have to do it, do the best that you can at it, right? And if you find a better way and you can contribute to making that thing you don't like so much something better, and it results in something more better for the organization and with better output, then it's a win-win for everyone.
This is awesome. So I'm holding up. I have your leadership philosophy in front of me, and I do appreciate it. You've got four key elements of what I believe, which I'm gonna read just the headlines of, and I want you to go into the fourth one. Integrity, beautiful. That's mostly understood by most people. Teamwork, none of us is as smart as all of us. That's a beautiful statement because you are bringing teams together and willing to listen as a leader, willing to listen. Accountability is the piece you just talked about, where sometimes we're going to be asked to do things that are beyond what we think we could be or should be doing, and yet I'm going to show up and do my best. And then excellence. And that is one of my core values in my business. And you say, well, I will work at excellence in everything I do, personally and professionally. And I love that.
You know you are bigger than the life you are leading. It really is time to attend to that thing you've wanted to do or have, but you've been putting off. It's time to step into that dream you've parked for someday. It's time to claim true well-being, both personally and professionally, without giving up the success that got you here. It's time to check out Dr. Pernell's signature small group retreat, the Exponential Success Summit. Explore exponentialsuccesssummit.com. Seats are extremely limited as this is a very special small group event. www.exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
Excellence is an attitude, it's a mindset. It allows you to exclude things. When you live in the world of excellence, you exclude things that are not excellent. And if you find something that, excuse me, if you find something that is close to excellent, you will either build it until it's excellent or you will exclude it. And
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that in your life, personally and professionally?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever got to excellence. It's a journey that you aspire to and you work towards. But if I think about all the excellence things you know that transpired throughout my life, when I look back, they weren't really excellent. They were just better than the next thing or better than the previous thing. And
I
there's
love
so
that. Wait. I want to call this out. This is awesome. So this is so good, Rich, and you don't even know you said it. What we do in our lives, that when we see what we think is excellence may or may not be excellence. Oh, look, I gestured and I get a little bubble. Um, what we think of as excellence may or may not be excellence really. It's simply better than we've had before. And that is amazing because if you've ever gone to a restaurant where they've served you and been attentive and the food has been amazing, it's like, that's my new baseline, right? That's
Mhm.
excellence. I want everything to be that. And, and, you aspire to have those kinds of meals and they're amazing, and then you find a restaurant that up levels that, and it's like, oh my goodness, like I didn't know that was possible. Airline travel, I travel a lot, you used to travel a lot. Airline travel finding excellence in customer service, in products. It's incredible. And I love that you said that it's the excellence is a journey. In fact, um it is finding something better than you've had, uh, and letting that be your new baseline. I added that last part. I think that could be a Wednesdays with Wayne blog post, actually. So stay tuned for that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, outside of the business world, and you and I have talked about this in the past, all of the things when I retired 2 years ago, all the things that I wanted to do when I was traveling 180 nights a year and spending, the Hilton Garden Inns and Southwest flights and all that. What did I want to do? I wanted to learn how to play music, play piano, and a bunch of other, play more golf, all the typical things you'd expect. So, with the music specifically, I went and Kathy found me a teacher, actually, my wife, and I went for instruction for about 6 months, and I was like, oh, I can do better than that. And then I got a second teacher, and then I got a third teacher, and I said, the hell with it, I'm just going to go online and do my own thing. And it goes back to historical things where I didn't really the person that I was looking up to advance me wasn't getting me to what I needed from them. So I just decided to do it on my own. And what I think is excellence in my learning music and playing songs to the average ear is like, oh, he's just beginning. But for me, it's the 100th time I played a specific song or
Yeah.
what have you. And when I think about how to be excellent at it, now I'm looking for another instructor to kind of move me to the next level. But every step you take and every day that you practice, in this case for me, it's a piano. I'm like, okay, that was better than the day before, but how long will it be? And actually, I remember asking my first instructor this. There's a piano solo in an Allman Brothers song. It's a famous song, and the name escapes me now. Jessica is the name of the song.
Jessica. Yeah.
And there's a 1.5 minute piano solo towards the beginning of the song. And I said to my teacher, I would love to play that solo. How long do you think it would take? Now, I'd been seeing her for maybe a month or two. She goes, well, probably about 10 to 12 years. I was like, what? No way. I could play that in a year or two. Well, I've been at it for 2 years and I can't come anywhere near that. And what I've determined is all of my favorite artists and music that I like to listen to, um, is at a level like Bruce Springsteen, not known for a huge piano uh, section, but his piano player, his nickname is the Professor, is one of the best pianists I've ever known. Yet Springsteen's band is not known for that. So, when I look up how to play his music, it's so complex. Billy Joel, Elton John, like all the things that you'd expect are beyond even my comprehension to read and play it with any competence. So I go back to my first instructor's, words of wisdom, and look, Rich, Billy Joel started playing piano when he was 6. He's 72, I think now. He doesn't have to look at the keys to do anything. I mean, this is 10,000 hours, on steroids, if you will.
Yeah.
But that excellence thing, if you keep chasing it, your version of excellence becomes um, how well you perform at that moment in time until you're the next time when you get a little bit better.
The phrase I use for myself and in my teaching is happily dissatisfied. And that is that you could stop where you are and go, you know what? I'm doing okay. Like, pause my life, look around, I'm doing okay. But my life isn't paused, and so I know there's more, and so I am happy where I am, and I am also on a journey, and so I'm dissatisfied with where I am, and I can hold both of those, happy and dissatisfied at the same time. And recognizing that you take skills, you internalize them, you seek mentorship, and skill build and internalize those skills, and then you seek additional mentorship at the next level. And I think that that is really that is also huge. You know, the highest performers, the highest athletes have more than one coach. They have sometimes, you know, two, three, six coaches. Like, you know, if you look at any of the top performers. And so for you to go, okay, it's a journey, right? It's not like, and destination thinking is sort of a trap. Like, I want to have it done in 6 months or 2 years or whatever. It's like, well, it takes however long it takes. And each individual
Mhm.
has their own journey. And it's also how much you're willing to devote to it. You're not giving, you know, 6 to 10 hours a day to piano, although you did buy one and over your right shoulder, there's a piano in the background. That's right. So, so it's there and you're practicing. Um, and it will take you some time. And that's with any skill, whether it's leadership or new language or new music. And the pursuit of that also keeps you active, and
Mhm.
your excellence level keeps improving. Like, can you say you're excellent? Yeah. Are you better than you were yesterday? That to me is excellence, right? That you are on the climb toward uh, uh, it's continuous improvement. It's Kaizen, right? It's the
Mhm.
continuous quality improvement. How am I getting better personally and professionally along the way? This is great, Rich. What haven't I asked you?
You know, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Actually, while you were talking, I was thinking about one of your other sharp sword events. Do you mind if I get into that a little bit that I
Oh,
attended?
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. So the good news is that you have engaged with me in coaching. You've engaged with me in my retreats,
Hmm.
and we've, you know, gotten together socially as well, which is
Yeah.
like all of that is an amazing relationship that we've developed
Yeah.
over the decade plus, right? So, yeah, so the retreat is what you're going to talk about.
Yeah. This was in Chicago a few years. I think it was 27. That was 2018, summer of 2018.
Wow. The next one's going to be back in Chicago, by the way.
After Napa.
Yep.
Okay.
We've
So,
been to Portugal just to kind of because this recording will be out there, you know, long beyond. We've been to Portugal, we've been to Vancouver Island, we've been to New York City, uh, San Francisco, Hollywood, Chicago, St. Louis. And I run them in April and October. And so April of 2026 is going to be Chicago.
okay. Awesome. So, when I attended this retreat, I was starting a new job. This was probably August or so of 2018. And I remember sitting in this room in the hotel. We were just getting started, and um, you looked at me and you said, you asked the question. You said, you know, you look hesitant. What are you hesitant about, Rich? I said, Wayne, I'm going into this job, you know, another billion plus company as a senior vice president of sales and marketing for a manufacturer, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And, you know, I've read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, and, you know, men typically will lean into jobs, uh, you know, more so than women, with not necessarily having the qualification to do so. It's just how men are built, I guess. And this job was a perfect example. I needed the work and I wanted to work, and I went through 22 interviews to get the job. And so that weekend we had together was me kind of noodling out how I'm going to step into this role and do the best that I can. Well, the first year was an absolute disaster. I was not doing well. The president and CEO who I reported to was not happy, and was reflected in my year end review. And so we talked about it, and Craig was his name. And, you know, he walked through the things that he didn't like or see or appreciate. I said, well, Craig, going to be honest with you. I've never worked in a manufacturing environment before. Distribution, wholesale, the type of structure for me this past year was a learning experience. But I promise you, if you give me the chance in the next year, you're going to be pleasantly, surprised. And he did. He gave me that chance and knocked it out of the park. Got it exceeds expectations for the role, and I had that role for 5 years. Now, that's critical. The 5 year mark is critical, is important because prior to that, there were 5 leaders in my position that made it less the 2 years or less. They just got washed out.
Mhm.
And at the end of my run there, I had some health issues and wound up coming out of the business, going into retirement. But if I didn't, if I didn't have the confidence in myself to go forward and put it out there and lean in, I would have been another statistic and another one and done employee. So my advice to anyone is, if you're struggling early on, but you sense that you're getting it, it's okay to ask for an extension if you believe that you have, what it takes to get there.
I'm gonna
And
say it's essential. Like along the way, ask for what you want. Recognize that you're deserving. These are the failure paths of, where people do blow out or burnout is, they feel like burnout is equated with loneliness. And when people isolate themselves because they don't feel like they do feel like they should know more, like they don't feel adequate. And so they retreat instead of, you know what, I've grown a lot this past year. I want to use what I've learned and I would like some help. And one of the strongest leadership questions is, or statements is, I need your help. And whether that's to your upline or to your team members, I need your help, or to your family. And so that's huge. That's huge.
yeah, I think you mentioned mentorship a number of times throughout our time together, and there were a couple of mentors I've had in my life, and I didn't know it at the time because the word mentor wasn't used. It was just you connected with somebody, they helped you progress, and they gave you a lot of Dutch uncle advice and things along the way. And then at some point, mentorship became a corporate terminology that they built programs around. And I remember when I was with Tyco, uh, one of my colleagues, who was a female in the same role as I, uh, she made a fuss about not having enough diversity, women in big roles. And I happen to agree with her. When I look, like when we would meet together at these leadership meetings, it was myself and 11 others who ran this company. All 11 were white male. 10 of
Mm.
the 11 were left-handed, myself included. So there was Tracy was the lone female in the group. And so she and I worked together to build a mentorship program for women in the organization. It was, I forget the acronym, but it was essentially we were to take 30 of the top females in the organization and assign each leader 3 of these females to mentor to move into director and higher level roles. And I remember we kicked the program off, and I can look around on the Zoom call, or at the time it was a Skype call, and all my colleagues rolling their eyes like, "Oh God, we have the DEI thing, we have to do this." But I thought it was a great idea, so I volunteered to lead it, and through that program, the first 3 folks that I worked with went on to director level roles. The second 3, 2 of them left the organization for better opportunities. And I thought it was the greatest thing because these are individuals that had as much capability as anybody sitting around that table, the left-handers included, but they just didn't have the outlet or the opportunity. And I continue that work today. I work for an organization called SCORE, which is sub sub a derivative of the Small Business Administration that essentially counsels young business owners to help start their businesses. So, here it is, 10, 12, 15 years later, I still do this in a different medium, of course, but it's tremendously helpful for people that don't have access to, advice or, just somebody to listen to their thoughts and ideas on how to progress in life. So
Well,
if you haven't done it, go be a mentor if you can, or go find one if you need one.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, go and it's not or, right? It's seek mentorship because you're in the process of excellence. So seek a coach to get to that next level. Seek someone who can guide you. Look, good coaches are around you, and offer what you know to someone who's, my saying is lift as you lead, right? Lift as you lead.
Mhm.
Like you are climbing, reach back and offer that hand to the next people that are behind you that could actually use your wisdom that you've gained along the way,
Yeah.
right? Even your piano teacher didn't start by yesterday, right? He or she, they have a track record. And so you
Mhm.
rely on the people that have run the miles ahead of you to say, this is the path, come with me. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important.
I
Any
think it's
go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important to find the right person. When I think about how you and I met, and I think it was 2012, Wayne, in Santa Clara, and you and I were at an event together. It was a leadership uh, conference, and I remember leaving, and we were introduced through Dr. Mike Rico, I believe, and I remember meeting you at that event, and it was a mountaintop kind of experience for me. But I left there knowing that that wasn't the right forward medium for me or venue. It was too cinematic, and I'm an extreme introvert. And I remember talking to you, and we got together not long after that through
Yeah.
our first session. So, uh, and you're the guy that I've stuck with. So you're not unlike my piano teacher. You've been around
Yeah.
for the long term here, but it's okay if you find somebody and they're not right for you. Find the person that's right for you, because whether you're paying for it or you're counting on advice to help you advance in your life, it's important to have the right chemistry with somebody to advance, what you want to do.
Great advice. Thank you. And it's been an honor to be on your journey with you and to be your coach and friend along the way. So thank you. And the other side of like mentorship is don't get your own ego. If you are mentoring somebody, don't get your own ego wrapped around, I'm going to fix this person. Because it takes distance a little bit. It takes your ability to detach in order to be able to guide somebody. And so do, as Rich, as you said, do find the right person to both be your coach and find the right person to be a mentor for. That's great.
Hmm.
As we wrap, any last thoughts, anything that you would say like, oh, I really want to convey this? Or do you think I mean, you and I, obviously, we could talk for weeks, months, etc. So anything in for today for our audience that you feel like you really want to make sure that you've passed along.
I mean, nothing comes to mind, Wayne. I'm humbled by the offer to work with you on this podcast, so thank you for that. And I would encourage. I've read all the books I see in the back behind you. Uh, the last one, Dynamic Transitions. Uh, I
Here it is.
remember,
Just I'm holding it up. Dynamic Transitions. It became an international #1 bestseller on
yeah,
Amazon.
I remember when you and I connected around the time when I retired, and about a week later, that book showed up at my house, and I remember reading it and thinking about the transitions from 150 miles an hour every day, reporting and responsible and accountability to a full stop. And how do you make the transition from 150 miles an hour to a full stop? And
Yeah.
reality is you don't stop. You just take that energy and you move it into those things that you've always wanted to do, or be it of service to other people or hobbies, what have you. So thanks for that book. I appreciate it. I encourage your followers to read it as well.
Thank you. That's awesome. Super supportive, Rich. Thank you so much.
And that's not a paid advertisement. That's
No,
just good.
that's awesome. I mean, that's the goal when I write a book is also, as mentor, as a mentor for kind of an invisible audience. When I'm writing, it's a solitary exercise. And I think about the people whose lives I've touched and what would they want to hear? What do they need to hear? How have I guided others in the past? And so, for me, if I can change a life or help somebody on their path through a book, it's great. And, my goal, I have a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. My goal is to positively impact 1 billion lives. That's an eighth of the population on the planet. And and so every day I get to ask myself, am I closer to that? Right. And that's through ripple effects also. Like you read the book, that affects your family, right? So there's a ripple effect. And that's, I think that gets me going, like living in purpose. And, you found your purpose and you stepped into it pretty strongly. And I'm in my purpose, doing this as part of it. And
Mhm.
it's pretty fantastic. So with that, I will say thank you for joining me, Richard
It's been my pleasure.
Bledsoe. Thank you. You've been amazing, and I appreciate every time we get to talk.
Thanks, Wayne. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All righty. This is One Sharp Sword Cutting Through to What Matters Most, and I am your host, Dr. Wayne Pernell. We will see you here next time.